is a place that collects water on farms. I'm not on a random person's farm. This is actually our friend's farm. He invited us down here for the weekend and it's awesome. Franklin River is a 3.5 hour drive south of Perth, and it's just a beautiful, peaceful place. When you're driving down here, you just see some vineyards. There's actually some wineries around here, but it's mostly just sheep, and right now they've all just had babies, so there's all these little baby lambs and they're so cute. There's cows and there's canola, so many canola flowers. We actually went kayaking. There's a river behind me, and we went kayaking this morning, which was really, really fun as well. So I'm really grateful. This is something that we take for granted here in Australia, is that you can just drive a short distance and you can just be in a beautiful place. You can come away for the weekend. So as kids, we mostly went camping because it's cheaper to go camping with kids when you're a family where only one parent is working. So my dad was working, and he had a pretty good job, but he was trying to support his wife and his 3 kids as well. So most of our holidays were camping type holidays, but it was really awesome because my parents would always take us on holidays once per year, usually in the school holidays. And the school holidays happen for 6 weeks around December, January. So that's our summer here. So that's when our school year ends. So let's talk about school. Well, the first thing is that school holidays, the concept of school holidays is quite different from in Asian cultures. So in the school holidays, Australian kids actually have holidays. They actually have time off. They don't want to do any work. There's no such thing as cram school. You might have homework class, maybe, if your parents choose to put you in homework class, but not always. And that might run for like an hour after school. But there's no such thing as kids finishing school and then going for 5 hours at the cram school. There's no such thing as heaps of little kids having dinner all by themselves and then going straight to cram school for class after class after class and coming home at 10 p.m. and then going to bed. Like, it's just not a thing. And if you tried to make Australian kids do that, they would be really, really unhappy about it, because it's definitely not what they're used to. I started school when I was 5. I was in pre-primary. Actually, now kids start school when they're 4 and they go into a class called kindergarten. That's mainly just playing and just getting used to the idea of going to school. It's not 5 days a week. I think it's 4 half days a week. And then I think pre-primary, when you're about 5 years old, that is full-time, so that's 5 days a week. And my memories of pre-primary are a lot of drawing, a lot of playing. We did writing, but we basically just learned how to write our name, and we learned the letters of the alphabet, and that was it. I didn't have any homework. I didn't have to go home and write letters of the alphabet on a piece of paper over and over. Pre-primary was just a really fun place to go. And then, so pre-primary really gets you ready for year 1, but in pre-primary you don't have a desk, you don't have little desks you sit at for every child or anything like that. Lots of it's on the floor or at big tables with lots of children. And then in year 1, it's the first time that Australian children really need to sit down at a desk and listen to the teacher. And actually with my work, I work with a lot of kids who have problems with listening, problems with paying attention, problems with memory. When a lot of kids go into year 1, we start noticing that they have difficulties with these things. I was fortunate enough to not have any learning difficulties. I was a very good student. I was good at sitting, I was good at listening, I was good at paying attention, I was good at doing what the teacher asked me to do. But in the early years of school, it's very fun and the teacher doesn't ask you to do a whole lot. So in year 1 and 2, the main focus is just learning how to read, learning how to write, basic stuff, and then also learning basic maths. That's the focus. It's not really until year 3 that we really start having to remember a lot of information, having to listen a lot to what the teacher's telling us. So year 3 and 4, it's really about gaining more knowledge. So I remember actually every year of schooling, my experience was different depending on what kind of teacher I had. So my year 4 teacher was really into telling stories, and she would encourage us to ask questions about her stories all the time. So I really enjoyed year 4 because I learned a lot from my teacher and her stories and from asking her questions. The teaching style was, we had textbooks, but it wasn't every single class, opening a textbook, answering from a textbook. So again, very different from Asian culture and probably a lot of non-Asian cultures as well. I don't really know. I can only go on what I've seen and what I've experienced myself. Then when I got into year 5, there was a much bigger focus on spelling, English, like writing, building up your writing skills. That carried on into year 6. In year 7, when I was at school, year 7 was the last year of primary school, and that was very much focused on getting you ready for high school. And then year 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 is high school. Now it's actually year 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 is high school, just a bit different. The school that we go to, that is quite different from what I experienced in Taiwan. So my understanding is that in Taiwan, the school that you get to go to depends on your grades, on your marks. Here in Australia, the school that you go to, mostly, if you go to a public school, I went to all public schools. My parents didn't pay for private schooling. Some people's parents paid for private schooling. That's probably a whole other video. But in public school, we just go to the school that's closest to our house. They allocate you, depending on where you live, they allocate you to a school, and that's the school you go to. So when I reached the end of year 7, there wasn't any test for high school, there wasn't any pressure. I just went to the high school that was near my house. And that was it. It was very, very easy. And I really didn't start doing exams until I was in year 8. So we had little tests in primary school, but really nothing with a lot of pressure. It wasn't until I was in year 8 that we started doing exams. I know this is also very different from Asian culture, where kids are used to doing exams from the very start. So lots of kids, when they get into year 8 and they have to start doing exams, it's actually a really big shock for them. It was a big shock for me. I managed to get used to it. I think it took me about until year 10 before I started getting some really good skills for exam taking. By the time I was in year 12, I was very, very good at exam taking, which was my goal, because in year 12, you take what's called the ATAR exam. The mark that you get on that exam will determine what kind of university you can get into if you want to go to university, and you don't have to. So I was very, very determined to get a good ATAR score, and I studied 4 hours every night in year 11 and year 12 to get a good ATAR score. I thought that was a lot of study. From seeing other cultures, that actually might not seem like a lot. To me, I was one of the hardest studying kids in my school. So 4 hours a night was considered extremely hardworking. So that was my schooling, and that leads me into work, I suppose, which is a cool subject. So let's go find another location and we'll talk about work. Alright, so let's talk about our last thing, which is going to take us basically from being a child into being an adult. And there are sort of really 2 major things that we would consider bring you from childhood into adulthood. Number 1 is working, and number 2 is getting your driver's license. We can start working in Australia legally from the age of 14 years and 9 months old. And that is when a lot of people will start working. In fact, when I was 13, I didn't want to wait. I was 13, I wanted to work. I had ideas, I had like business ideas, and it was really cool because my dad always supported me with those ideas. So he never said, hey Tina, you can't do that, hey Tina, you're too young. And I never really appreciated that fully until later on in life, when I discovered that there are always people who are going to tell you that you can't do things that you want to do, that you're not capable of it. They're going to make you feel like you're not good enough. And I just really appreciate that my dad was never like that. And I'm talking mostly about my dad because I was really interested in computer stuff. And so was my dad. He's a computer programmer, and he always really encouraged that interest in me because it was something that we had in common. When I was 13, I wasn't able to work for an employer, but I could work for myself. So I started my own business. It was called Tina's Website Design. And I made a website for myself, and then I went around to local businesses and I told them that for just $10 I could build them a website. So this was when most businesses didn't have a website, and they maybe didn't see why it was necessary either, but I thought about businesses that really needed a website, and I targeted real estate agents in the area. And I actually ended up getting jobs with quite a few real estate agents. So I turned something that was my hobby into something that I could make money out of, because before that I was just making websites about boy bands that I liked or other things that I liked. I'd made all these websites. What actually happened is, because a real estate agent's website needs to be updated all the time, I got ongoing work where I would go in once a week to the real estate agent. I would pick up all the photos and descriptions of the new houses that they had to sell that week, and I'd find out which ones need to be deleted, and then I would do that once a week, and I charged them say $10 or $15 a week to do that. And I had 3 real estate agents in the end that I was doing that for, so that was a great little job for me. And then I actually started getting more work building websites by word of mouth. And then eventually, when I did turn 14 years, 9 months, one of the real estate agents hired me as a receptionist for Saturdays. At the end of year 12, when I was going into university, I had a long break between when I finished year 12 and I started university. We have about a 3-month break. So I went to find another job, and I found a job doing administration work and website work for the Water Corporation, who manage all of the water in Western Australia. So I managed to get that full-time job, and I was actually still going to the real estate agent on the Saturday, but I eventually gave that up because we ended up moving away from that area, so it was a very long drive. I ended up getting this other admin job, and that job, they employed me during the holidays. They employed me full-time as well while I was at university, and I had 1 day a week, and they would let me change that day depending on my classes. So if I had classes every day except for Tuesday, they would allow me to go on Tuesday. So I worked all the way through university. So by the time I had graduated from university, I had quite a bit of work experience, which really helped me with finding a job after that, which was related to the course I'd taken at university. For me, when I see people who have never ever worked until they've graduated university, it's very hard for me to understand how that could be, because it's not part of my culture, and it's not part of who I am, because I've always really loved working. I love work that I enjoy, let's put it that way. Sometimes kids work because they need to, because their family don't have enough money. And sometimes they work because they want to. Sometimes kids who don't need to work because their parents are rich, they don't work. And then what happens when they graduate university is it's actually harder for them to get a job. Because if everybody else has work experience, but you don't have any work experience, then the employer isn't going to choose you. Why? Because if you have work experience, you know a little bit, or you've had some experience with what it's like to work in a team, what it's like to communicate within a team. So the last thing on the path to becoming an adult, or so I thought, was getting a driver's license. And that's something that you can start doing when you turn 16. So when you turn 16, you can go for a written test and you'll get a learner's permit. And when you're learning, you have to be with somebody who's either a driving instructor or somebody who has 4 years of experience on a full license. My dad was really good. He was willing to teach me, but after he taught me, I don't think he wanted to do any more, and he didn't teach my sisters how to drive. He paid for driving lessons for them, so maybe I traumatized him. Sorry, Dad. So my dad taught me how to drive. We started when I was 16, and then when you're 17, you're allowed to go for your driving test. When I got my driver's license, you went for your test, you passed your test, and then that was it. Now you have to get a certain amount of hours of driving experience before you can actually go for the test. Mine didn't have that requirement. It was just whether or not you passed the test. The test is very hard to pass the first time. So we practice driving on roads, not like in Taiwan where I understand it's on a track, like it's on a practice track. We learn to drive on the road, and we have the test on the road. It's scary. The test is hard. They have a big checklist, and if you make any mistakes, you get crosses off the checklist, and more than 1 or 2 crosses is immediate fail. You just can't make any mistakes. And I have a friend, she went for the test 8 times before she passed it. My cousin, I think, he went 3 times. Same with one of my sisters. I managed to get it the first time that day. I wanted my license. I really wanted my license badly because I lived in a place that was in the country and I lived in a place that wasn't near where all my friends were necessarily. I needed to drive, and I really wanted to drive because I really wanted that independence. So on the day that I turned 17, I went for that test and I was determined to pass, and I passed it and I got my license. And that sort of, I felt, led me into the world of of adulthood. The problem is, I think, there's a bit of a problem with the system. So you learn to drive at 17, you can work by then as well, and you can start drinking when you're 18, okay? And what we know about the brain and the way young people learn to make decisions is that this part of your frontal lobe in your brain that makes decisions about consequences, so that thinks ahead and thinks, what's going to be the consequence of my action, this part continues to develop into our early 20s. So I think that giving people a license and then allowing them to drink straight after, this wasn't a problem for me because I was quite responsible, but I think that this kind of timing causes a lot of problems and a lot of accidents and a lot of irresponsible driving. These young people often are not able to make really good decisions for themselves about what might be the consequence of, say, drinking and driving. In contrast, in America, you can't drink until you're 21. Thank you for watching my video. If you liked it, please hit like. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit the bell so you know when I have a new video. Share this video with your friends if you think that they would be interested in it too. And I can't wait to see you next time. Bye.